Hi everyone. So for today's show, I had the pleasure of having Stephen Lee as a guest on the show. He's the international expansion leader for eXp Realty in Australia. So we covered a lot about the company's global expansion plans, workplace culture and management quality, high-tech adoption including virtual reality, and how agents are the owners of the business, the competitive advantage they have against other companies like Redfin and Zillow, and how people can actually join eXp Realty. So I first found out about this company back in early 2020, and I liked the company so much I went ahead and did my due diligence through an article on Medium, Data Driven Investor, and I'll leave the link down below if you want to have a look, where I go through the entire overview of the business, including their commission splits, where they have a higher commission split than traditional brokerages, and how the management has skin in the game through stock options, and the management actually owns more than 30% of the business. Um, Furthermore, I covered how the stock has had a massive rally in 2020. When I covered the stock, it was only $40, but beginning of 2020, it was less than $10. And actually, Stephen Lee, he when they got allocated the stock, he got the stock at $7. And as of right now, 26th of January 2020, the stock is trading close to 110 US dollars. So furthermore, I covered about their high-tech adoption, including their KV Core CRM platform, and more significantly, Virbella, which would be the future of work for many industries going forward. And apart from that, I covered the quality of their management, and including Glenn Sanford, how he actually founded the company back in 2008 to 2009 when the real estate market was collapsing. And I talk about the future outlook of their company, how they're disrupting real estate, which is $1 trillion market. Now let's get on with the show.
There's a little saying in EXP: when you've seen it, you can't unsee it. And I'm talking there about the value proposition. So in simple terms, what attracted me to EXP was the very generous nature of the overall company. So we're able to share a lot of the commissions, the hard-earned commissions that our agents earn, back with the agent. And when they get to a certain level, and that certain level in Australia is 100,000. So up to 100,000, they're on a 70-30 split. The agent keeps 70, we get 30. Up to that 100,000. At 100,000, we call that capping, and then they keep 100% of all their commissions they earn. So when I first saw that, I thought, wow, there's nobody really in Australia being that generous. How can we afford to do that? It's because our entire business is cloud-based, so we don't have the typical restraints of owning offices, paying leases on offices, which not only during the current time of COVID, some of those offices had to be closed. There was lots of expense associated with them. We're not advocating that everyone closes down their real estate office. We're just saying we have a model that when or if you should ever decide that you'd rather have less cost in your business rather than what you have now, well, then we might be an alternative for you, because you can strip out the entire costs of that business or that building or that lease by being with EXP. So that's in broad terms. We're leveraging technology. We're often likened to the Uber of real estate or the Netflix of real estate. Another little saying we have: would you want to own a Blockbuster store if you knew that Netflix was here? The answer is probably not. And so we liken that a little bit to what we're doing. Do you want to have an office when longer term, would you rather not have the costs associated with that? In simple terms, that's what we do. Yeah. So essentially the business model is the same in terms of its structure. It's cloud based. A lot of the costs are taken out of it. The things that are primarily different are some of those splits that I referred to. So some of the numbers, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So I explained before, we have a 70-30 split. So 70% is kept by the agent of the commissions they earn, and 30% comes to us up to that 100,000. In the US, that's different. They have an 80-20 split with an 80,000, and this is US dollars. So when you do the translation, it's pretty similar. In fact, theirs is probably higher than ours in relative terms. So those two things are different. We both have our normal monthly fees. Our monthly fees in Australia are $199 a month to get access to all of our systems. Similar in the US. And then we have a transaction fee. Every transaction that we manage, getting through to when commissions payable, we have a fee of $250. Happens to be in the States the same value. So, and then when we talk about later how we reward our agents for helping us grow, we call that revenue share, and we can explore that a bit further. We're a publicly listed company, so we award stock to our agents. All of that is exactly the same in the US as it is here. The only difference being is that we award an equivalent number of items of stock to the equivalent Australian value of dollars that
Yeah.
we give back to you. So they're the only difference. But fundamentally, all of our businesses around the world now, and we've now just opened in 5 new countries. You may have read recently we've opened in from South Africa and Portugal and France and Mexico. So that's great news. So all of our countries operate a similar model, being very generous to the agents, allowing them to keep more of the commissions that they earn, and also being able to benefit from those other additional revenue streams like revenue share that we give to the agent for helping us grow our business. Essentially, they're introducing other agents to our business, not in a proactive way. Even often, if Ash were to join EXP and you've got a lot of people that know you in the real estate world, Ash is going to get a lot of phone calls saying, "Ash, I see you've just left. Let's say it's Ray White. I see you've just left so and so, but you joined EXP. Is that American company? Yeah, it is. What's it all about, Ash?" And suddenly you get the opportunity to tell your story, why you've done what you've done, and suddenly that snowballs. So talented agents attract other talented agents, and they're often followed. And people go, "Okay, I think I should look at this. If Ash is in there, it's something I need to look at." That's how we've grown so dramatically in the US, by giving back some of those company dollars that we collect, but giving them back to our agents to help us grow the business.
Now, eXp Realty has expanded to 5 countries in a short span of time, and leveraging your already existing technology, including Virbella, you can easily expand to many more countries. Is that the ultimate goal of eXp Realty?
Absolutely, it is. And Virbella is just one of those pieces of technology. It's a very important piece. It's not for everybody initially. Everybody may not see the need to log into this EXP world, which essentially is a virtual campus. Visualize a university campus with buildings in it and auditoriums and boardrooms. But there will be a time where, so for the likes of me, where I'm running a country, Australia, there's a definite need for me to collaborate with my colleagues around the world. So it happened to be 2 o'clock in the morning my time, which was 11 o'clock Eastern time in the US. And then the other countries around the world probably had slightly friendlier times than I did. But so we met in EXP World. So we log in, we're in avatars. I did get dressed, so I wasn't in my pajamas at 2 o'clock in the morning. But I can log in. I'm at my desk as I am now, and I'm logging in as an avatar. And my avatar, I can make it walk, and I stand on stage alongside my other colleagues. And when I'm asked to speak, my avatar can walk along. So it's almost the more you do it, the more real it starts to feel. And I know that's going to sound weird, like I'm pushing this almost like a computer game, but it was built for the very reason of what it does. It provides that extra level of being able to move around more. I mean, this is great that we can do Zooms, but when you're being able to walk around and go into different buildings and have meetings in people's offices, the more that it facilitates that a bigger sense of community. People are joined together. People can meet. And we just recently held the shareholder summit I talked to before. It was in Florida last year. That was the last time we met. Well, actually, it wasn't the last time we met physically. At the end of the year, we had another conference in Las Vegas, and then of course we've not had those same things. But we didn't let that stop us. We built a virtual village of visualized Darling Harbour in Sydney. I don't know if you've been to the big convention centre. We essentially built one of those in our world. So we could walk into an exhibition hall. We could go and meet people on different stands, different suppliers. We could go to breakout sessions. So we could do all the things that you would ordinarily do by getting on a plane and flying to a big convention centre in Florida. But we do it all now in that virtual world. And because of that, and because we've got that technology, and because of COVID, it's almost like we were built for times like this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Virbella has now got increasingly more and more clients from Harvard University. We've got companies now using that technology. I think it's either Boral or it's one of the mining companies, BNP, I think it is, out in WA. So there's a number of companies around the world who are now using that same platform we use, but to the benefit of their company, so that you can have these meetings and conferences and all sorts of things, and virtual learning environments. So yeah, it's an important part of our platform.
Okay. So let's talk a bit more about your expansion plans in Australia. So you actually started in Australia just last June 2019, and I couldn't actually find out any numbers on the agents in Australia. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So May was when I came on board to start building the company because it didn't exist. So from bank accounts to registering the company to licenses and websites, all that technology all had to be built. So we didn't open our doors until just over a year ago. It was on the 2nd of December, 2019. So we've been open just over a year. We've learned a lot during that time. We've brought on board a number of agents. So we're now we've recruited nearly 100 agents. For various reasons, we've lost probably around 25 of those. For most of them are not because they don't like us. Some have been affected by COVID. Some have just put their real estate business on hold. Some have decided to wait till COVID's finished and then start again. And then others for other personal reasons that they felt that they needed to go back and work in an office, because some people can't. Not everyone
Yeah.
can work. So we're not presenting ourselves as the utopia of real estate. It's not for everybody. So we're around 70 agents now. We've got another close on 40 agents who have registered their interest. Some have applied online. Some have been approved. Some are now considering their agreements. Some are working through the migration of leaving their business as it is now to join us in the new year. So yeah, we're encouraged. Whilst I look at some of these numbers overseas, Mexico, a good example, and others, massive growth, very quick growth. Somebody said to me the other day, Stephen, if you'd opened a real estate office a year ago and you now had 70 agents working in that office, you'd be a superstar, because that sort of stuff just doesn't happen. It takes you many, many years to build a big office. So yeah, we're pretty proud of the size that we've got to. We're forecasting by the end of next year, we'll be close on 300 agents, if not more. And we're currently in discussions with a group. I won't say who it is, of course, but who have a lot of agents. They have over 200 agents, and they're seriously now considering moving their model into become eXp. And I think there'll be increasingly a lot of those sorts of entities, whether they're standalone offices with 5, 10, 20 agents, who are saying, is this the model, do I want to have a Blockbuster store moving forward now that Netflix is here? There's tongue in cheeks and a smile as I say that, but typically there's some of the conversations we have, but they take some time to mature. There's probably a little bit of fear there. What am I going to do if we don't have the office any longer? Well, no, keep your office for a while, but over time you can choose the right time when you might have a smaller office, because less of your agents come into it, etc., etc. We have some neighbours not far away, like New Zealand, so we have aspirations to grow into New Zealand. At the moment, we're licensed in 5 states. We would look to be licensed in the remaining states in the coming year, probably. So if we look at from the Northern Territory or ACT, Tasmania, yeah, we'd want to be licensed in those states as well. We'd also want to be licensed for commercial real estate. At the moment, we don't have a value proposition for commercial. It's not a difficult thing, but so again, there's commercial, there's the additional states that we look to be licensed in. There's New Zealand, which is our neighbor. And then when we look at the international landscape, Michael Valdez, the president of eXp Global, already has plans to grow into a number of new countries next year. I can't release what those countries are. I can talk about the ones. It's the first time it's ever been done around the world, is to expand into 5 countries without ever getting on a plane in the way that we have. And that took 2 months. So we expanded quickly in 2 months into 5 new countries. So if you translate that model into other countries where there's an appetite, a licensing regime even, the right volume of agents in those countries, then we look to those as opportunities to grow the business. In fact, Michael shared with me this morning, by the end of next year, we'll be roughly 25% of the size of the domestic market in the US. And the forecast is that globally, we could be, and he's already put this out there, by 2023, he would look that the international global agent footprint is larger than the domestic footprint in the US and Canada. US and Canada will include.
Yes.
So that's pretty exciting stuff. In the next 2 years, the global business is going to be bigger than the one that we're currently talking about today, which has got 40,000 people.
So with those ambitions, obviously, they're not worried about competition like Zillow and Redfin. What if are there any concerns of Zillow getting into that business model as well?
There are some areas of our business which are relatively easy to copy. And some are the commission splits, for example, is one. Well, yeah, I can copy that if I want to. And and I'll talk about and some of the other technology pieces we use. You can get similar CRM systems and other stuff. Some of the big differences is one is Virbella. So Virbella that owns our campus. We own Virbella. We paid, I think, I'm told, 10 million US. We bought that company a few years ago. So clearly we own it for the reason that only us can use it for the purposes that we use it. So that is exclusive to us. Could other companies potentially copy that? Well, they could, but it would, you think about creating what we've now got with Virbella, because it's grown even since the time when we acquired it. Yeah, that would take some considerable effort and resources to build the equivalent of that. The other bit, which is difficult to recreate, is the value now that we built in our publicly listed company, which is on the NASDAQ, ticker symbol EXPI. I was saying before about where it was trading just over a year ago to what it's trading as today. And we don't just do that because we want to make Glenn Sanford wealthy. And the market cap, I think, is 4 or 5 billion now. It's not for that. When I first met Glenn, I said, I saw this hockey stick thing. We were growing steady, and then we did this. What happened here, Glenn? And there were two things. One is that at that time, we bought a publicly traded company because he had a desire to want to give shareholding to every member of the EXP team. So every one of our 40,000 agents are all shareholders in the business. So at a deeper, warm, fuzzy level, I now feel like I belong to a company. I'm not just an employee. So that was one thing. And the other bit was creating the revenue share opportunity where we reward our agents for helping us to grow. So they were the two big ingredients. So, could other companies recreate some of those things? Maybe. The stock holding thing would be quite difficult. You'd publicly list and then get to the level that we have. To have Virbella, difficult to do and expensive to do. Revenue share model, potentially that could be duplicated where you reward agents for helping you grow. But I think it's those are the two elements, that the stock, increasingly as I talk to agents, the revenue split is attractive, but the more they hear about what the value of the stock was and what it is now, and the fact that they get awarded with that stock. And in some instances, we call it the Icon Agent Program. When an agent gets to a certain level, so first of all, they've got a cap, they've got to have done 100,000 and roughly 20 transactions. We give them back their entire $30,000 they pay to us, but we give it them back in stock. And we vest that stock, some of it, a large portion of it for 3 years, another portion for 2 years, and then a smaller portion we just give it to you. You've got it, you can sell it tomorrow. So that's difficult to duplicate. Not impossible, nothing's impossible, but difficult to duplicate for any competitors.
You talked about Glenn Sanford. I was just checking his Glassdoor rating. So he has one of the highest Glassdoor ratings I've ever seen. He's got 93% CEO rating,
Yeah.
and he has 30% ownership in EXPI. So he, like a lot of people have commented saying he's a visionary leader with very big long-term plans. What are your thoughts on him and the rest of the management?
I've been fortunate enough to have met Glenn personally. He was over here in Australia at the end of last year, or sorry, at the beginning of this year, just before COVID was really hitting. So I've had the pleasure of spending time with him. He's a very humble man. He's a very smart man, clearly. Most of his career prior to creating EXP, he's the first to say, I had a lot of startups. Not all of them were successful. In fact, most of them didn't do very well at all. But he was a techie. He got encouraged to get into real estate, which he wasn't too keen on, but he did. And then he started seeing all of these gaps of where things that could be improved to do things different. So with his technological brain and his passion for people and sharing, he then established, this was 10 years ago, he established EXP. So yeah, so that's Glenn. I've also had the fortune to meet people like Jason Gessing. He's the CEO of eXp Realty. So that's the company with 40,000 agents. And when I first reached out to EXP, I'd left a company at that time. I was getting a bit frustrated and doing the same things, expecting different results. So I left and looked around, and I saw a couple of videos on EXP. And as they say, when you've seen it, you can't unsee it. And I thought, if these people ever come to Australia, I think they'll do really well. So I reached out at that stage. I was fortunate. I didn't really know who he was, but I found Jason Gessing. We had a couple of meetings like this. We liked each other. He liked my background, but they weren't ready to expand into Australia or other countries for that matter. Accelerate forward to the start of last year. I thought I'd landed the dream job. I was working for John McGrath down in Sydney. I was his head of talent attraction for his company-owned offices. But I get the phone call from Jason, hey, we're ready. What are you doing? Are you still interested? So for me, that was a no-brainer. Yeah, let's get this thing going. And I said to him, the first time I met him was at that shareholder summit. And this gives you, and I'm trying to relate sort of some of the culture that I felt within this company. It sounds a bit loose to call it a family business, but it really is as big as it is. So when I first met Jason, I saw him and I knew him instantly, and we came across the road, and he just gave me a big hug. And on one of my speeches that I made, I just made the point, because they were asking me this question, how would you describe the culture from what you've seen of all the people you've met so far, Stephen? And I told that little story, and I said, here's the first boss I've ever had who on the first day of meeting him gave me a hug, first one. Might be the last one I've done, but not that we're all huggy, but it told me something about him as an individual and as a human being, and also with Glenn. That so yeah, we're part of this amazing family, and I hear that word almost every day or every week from somebody describing what it feels like to be part of EXP. So, and I think so. Big aspirations with the company, big aspirations globally. Um, we've recently acquired a company called Success. So Success Magazine, you might know of it, is in the US. We recently acquired that business. There's a whole heap more to it than just the magazine. There's a lot of key note speakers who are part of that stable of the business. We recently acquired that. Glenn, I think he's got an appetite to, I'm not saying diversify, but I think that won't be the last acquisition we see uh, for synergetic businesses, if that makes sense. I think in the US, they have aspirations to potentially take on board some of the big websites, the Zillows of this world.
Oh,
So again, that might be something that we'll see in future days where, we'll have such scale that we can potentially control or bring the audience to us rather than potentially using external third parties.